Smai, Samina. I'm a dance movement psychotherapist trained at Roehampton University, and I work with clients that are children from 3 to 10 years old in primary schools. I've worked with children with profound and multiple learning disabilities. I've got experience with people in the mental health sector, working with adults with schizophrenia and depression, but also having had acute phases in hospitals, also integrating back into society. I've also worked with the elder communities around isolation, bereavement, grief, and also currently working with a lot of people that are finding it challenging during COVID. So what I would like to say about how I work as a dance movement psychotherapist, so I was trained in integrative approach, which means that I allowed myself to try different methodologies, working with the phenomenological approach. I worked with the Gestalt approach, definitely client-centered, which is whatever people bring in the moment on the day. And working with a toolkit, so sometimes when I work with children, I work with much more of the psychodynamic approach because there's a lot of developmental research around that, which really helps. I also work with lab and movement, and I also work a lot with the neuroscience at the moment, which is something that I feel really informs my work and is something that I think the NHS and people that refer to psychotherapists or people that work in the healthcare system could really benefit from, this idea that actually movement patterns and working with the body creates healing and creates changes in behaviour far quicker than when we try to logically work things out. It's a way of expressing what needs to be expressed and find that expression in the body and then allowing the meaning making later, because actually when we do that it's far quicker. The other reason why I work with the body is, as human beings, we have two parts. We have this sort of animal part of the back of our brain, the reptilian part, that also kind of works on a very embodied level around fight or flight or freeze or surrender and collapse. And these are all ways that actually help animals in the wild. So when our prefrontal brain is engaged as a human being and we're talking to maybe a therapist, it's really difficult because we could have all this stuff going on a visceral level with our sympathetic nervous system up, but we're trying to socially engage because we're here as a human being to human being. Essentially, I'm using my body as a tool to inform the sessions of what's happening with the others, what's happening in the intersubjective space between myself and the other or the others, what's happening in the group. So I do it based on what my feeling sense is, which is these amazing neuroscience is showing more and more and discovering more about how we work and function as human beings. I also use that as a tool because actually a lot of people I work with have trauma, and they have trauma that started when they were babies. So there's no words around this. There's no logical explanation. And then there's also, it could be something from just eye contact and gazing. There's also things around mirroring and things that are sensed as we get older as children, but still it's very difficult to find sophisticated language around, especially when we're older and we're reflecting back. So some of these things are so visceral and so up for us, and yet it's really challenging to make sense out of it verbally. And that's why I love working with the body and working with movement, because you can really express these things. And if someone's feeling rage, how do you find a safe way to express that without it being dangerous to themselves or others? Sometimes I do bring in things like pens and pencils and props to try and support the movement of what needs to be expressed creatively. Some people also like to use objects as well, like in almost a constellation way, which symbolise different parts of themselves or different aspects of their life that they'd like to move around and play around with. And I also like to use nature because I feel that's an added resource to help support people's nervous system to calm, and to also use messages from different parts of nature that sometimes, suddenly stand out in a moment during a therapy session, and it allows people to say, oh yeah, what does this blade of grass that's just started to move want to say about this situation, because it's just suddenly stood out across the road, or something opens up in that person and the sun suddenly beams down and they're like, oh, I really felt the sun beaming on my face as I had that realisation. And isn't that incredible? That is another level of resource there available to us in the therapeutic setting. I really feel that I'd love to see much more creative art therapists being referred to from the NHS or working with them in-house, because there's just so much more science around showing how this really helps in an embodied way to support people psychotherapeutically. So I would love any questions that might arise from this video. I think we have a panel discussion later, and I'd love to answer any questions that pop up. That's it from me for now. Thank you.